Listen, I don't do that anymore, you understand? I don't do it. What's mine is mine, nobody else's, and that's the way it is, see?
See, what are you out from under the thumb now or something?
Yeah, didn't you hear? I'm the mob boss now.
Richard Gere and Diane Lane fall in love in the Cotton Club, a crime story set in the legendary 1920s Harlem nightclub. And it's one of the new movies we're going to be reviewing this week on At the Movies, the movie review program. I'm Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune. In addition to the Cotton Club, the long-awaited new film from director Francis Coppola, we'll also be reviewing The River with Sissy Spacek, the third of this year's so-called Save the Fire movies. Also, The Flamingo Kid, a comedy about a poor boy, Matt Dillon, growing up under the tutelage of a rich card-sharp Richard Crenna. But first, Roger starts with the sequel to one of the year's most popular breakdancing movies.
Well, one of the movie surprises of last spring was certainly Breakin, the first of the breakdance movies, and a movie that at the time you liked better than I did, but more and more it begins to have better qualities in my memory. It was a low-budget quickie, had a lot of rough spots in it that I found fault with at the time, and now looking back over a year that has had the usual share of dreary and boring films, I remember Breakin with a lot of affection. And now comes a sequel with a kind of ungainly title, Breakin 2, Electric Boogaloo. It's a whole lot of fun, this movie, with wall-to-wall music and dancing. Here's a scene where Boogaloo Shrimp, one of the stars, is in the hospital with some broken bones.
Emergency. Sweat.
Of energy there. The other main characters were played by Shabadoo Quinones and Lucinda Dickey, who along with Boogaloo Shrimp Chambers have been the stars of both films. The plot of Electric Boogaloo is recycled directly out of those old Mickey Rooney movies where the evil real estate guys want to tear down the club where the kids dance and meet, and the kids fight back by putting on a show. Hey guys, let's put on a benefit, buy the club for ourselves. The plot is silly. That also was in all the Beach Party movies too. The performances are thin in this movie, but the energy and joy are laid on real thick, and there's a lot of fun in Electric Boogaloo. I liked it. I recommend it.
Well, you're 0 for 2 on the Breakin series as far as I'm concerned. You were wrong the first time because the first one was good. This one, I think, is less of a film. It's not bad. There's some real good dance numbers in it, no question about it. But you've also hit on the things that are, the plot creaks and the characterizations creak, especially of the bad guys. There is such good charm and goodwill among these three principal players. Particularly, I love this Lucinda Dickey. I liked her in even a Ninja 3, so that means she's pretty appealing. I just felt that if they could have supported them, these three players, with a better story and more interesting evil people, it would have been a much better film.
Maybe they'll make a Boogaloo 3 and you'll be able to see the movie you wanted to see, but it seems to me...
I already did. Boogaloo 1.
Fine, but the thing about this one is, first of all, it's more professionally put together than the first one. Secondly, the dancers are in better shape. I think they've spent the last 6 months at the gym. And third, in a way, it is a self-conscious parody of old movies. For example, there's even a scene where a Boogaloo Shrimp dances all the way around a room like Fred Astaire and Dancing on the Ceiling, and all of the Beach Party and Mickey Rooney references, so that in a sense, the movie has its tongue in its cheek, and you ought to let it do that.
Well, I'll say this. There is a good Breakin movie out, and it was the first one, Breakin. Come up next at the movies, a visit to the notorious 30s Harlem hangout, the Cotton Club.
Life with you will always be divine.
You Peter Pan, you killed Dutch.
The film is Francis Coppola's The Cotton Club, one of the most eagerly awaited films of the holiday season, a film that has had a much reported on troubled production history, but who cares about that? It's the movie that counts, and The Cotton Club, the movie, turns out to be a fine but wildly uneven picture with a lackluster star at its center and a story, I think, that doesn't really kick into high gear until the second hour. In reality, The Cotton Club, the nightclub, was a celebrated Harlem hangout where the greatest black entertainers of the day Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, Lena Horne, and many others perform for exclusively white audiences that included the most notorious gangsters and show business stars of the day. And grafted onto that reality about the club is this story of how a white cornet player, Richard Gere, becomes adopted by mobster Dutch Schultz when he saves Schultz's life at the club.
Sorry about it. Listen, it's good.
Hey, bravo! All right.
Buddy, hey, it's $5. Nice trumpet.
Hey, will you come over here?
Yes, the big one.
Hey, that trumpet duel was great, but you beat him bad. You ought to be put away for laughter.
Hey, girls. Hey.
Get it, Nicole.
What are you sitting there all alone for? Come here. Give me a chance to dazzle you. Take your breath away.
Do it. Come on.
Look out. Look at this. Kid's got the Midas touch with the broad. Park her right here.
What am I going to sit on?
Please, you know. I'm having that.
What a rude man.
Just your name, huh? All right, Veronica, Alice, am I right?
Forget it.
I got a Myrtle here.
Vera, as in very, very. Cicero, like in Latin. Did you ever study Latin?
I was an altar boy.
Myrtle, huh?
Yeah.
That's your birth name?
I was.
I believe
Hey,
it.
you wearing a girdle?
Yes. Oh, that's a lovely time.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Going with anybody?
Yes. Ring on my finger, honey. What are they doing?
Behaving, Mr.
You wanted by the police, Mr. Cerrone.
Good night, fellas.
Watch out! Go after him! What the hell is this?
Some people don't like me.
Who the hell are you, anyway?
I'm your Dutch uncle from now on, pal. I owe you one. Dutch Schultz owes you.
That was James Remar as Dutch Schultz doing an imitation, I think, of Eddie G. Robinson in Little Caesar. And Diane Lane there as the pretty young girl who both Richard Gere and the Dutchman find attractive, and there will be a conflict in the film over that. In addition to the story of those white people, the Cotton Club has a black story to tell of two tap-dancing brothers and how in the crazy world of the Cotton Club, where somebody is always stepping on top of somebody else to get ahead, one of these brothers has given the other brother the shaft, and now years later, after they haven't talked for years, the big star comes back to apologize to his brother.
Why don't you and your brother Clayton dance together?
Come on.
Come on, guys.
When a highbrow meets with lowbrow, walk along Broadway. Soon the highbrow, he had no brow, ain't it a name? And you're to blame. What's the use of a prohibition? You can use the same condition. Crazy
That's one of the very best scenes in the movie. That was Gregory Hines apologizing to his real-life brother there, Maurice Hines, and that's one of a number of great moments in this film, which was just too short for me, too short to tell all of its stories completely. And another problem is Richard Gere, who I find utterly lacking in humanity on the screen of late. He's a real drag in this picture, and yet for every problem with the Cotton Club, I can name at least 2 or 3 things that are terrific about it. The show production numbers, a raft of fine supporting performances, including one great imitation of Cab Calloway, a magnificent sequence involving Gregory Hines, tap dancing to mobsters, gunfire, and a provocative theme in the film about how people get ahead in America, often by stepping on top of other people. So I did like the Cotton Club. I just wish there were more of this movie and less of Richard Gere.
Well, Richard Gere didn't bother me. I thought he was just fine in the picture, but I agree with you that there should have been a lot more of the movie. In fact, another hour, and they say they have 200,000 extra feet of this film.
I'd see every foot.
Let's put some of it in. They probably thought, well, it's too long. We won't be able to get it into the theaters if we make it that long. But what it has is the same kind of richness that The Godfather had, the same kind of complexity, and the same kind of nostalgic sort of elegiac memory feeling. I mean, you have the notion here that years are passing and that lives are being made, that some people are being successful, that other people are failing, that it all happens with this musical background, which was the same thing that Coppola had on The Godfather. A real epic story, wonderfully told, great character performances by another dozen actors that we haven't mentioned yet.
You know what's going on in the movie industry right now? They're all afraid of the 3-hour film. The right stuff bombed, and everyone's saying, keep it to 2 hours, keep it to 2 hours. And I'll tell you that it's a terrible development. And I think that, I hope that in some way that this film gets released in a much fuller version, a 3-hour version, or even longer.
You know, two guys you ought to mention are Bob Hoskins and Fred Gwynne. Bob Hoskins plays the little club owner. He was in The Long Good Friday, that great British crime picture. Fred Gwynne is a real tall, kind of monster sort of guy who plays a character named Frenchie, and their relationship in the movie, I think, is as good as anything else. That funny kind of love-hate.
The other thing I like is that it's a musical with a social conscience. And the last one we saw was Cabaret, one of the great American musicals. This is another one in that way, because this film has a lot to say about segregation, racism, and the way people have to struggle in the various classes.
It's got an edge.
Very hard edge.
It's got a cutting edge. Next at the movies, Sissy Spacek and Mel Gibson do battle with the river.
Don't tear me down. All I got was growing in these fields. Look out!
The movie is named The River, and it's the third and least successful of this year's 3 movies about saving the family farm. Places in the Heart, the first one, had a spiritual quality that was very moving, and Country, the second one, had an angry contemporary political message. But The River seems to be more of a standard story about good guys and bad guys. The movie stars Mel Gibson and Sissy Spacek as the parents of 2 kids who are trying to hold on to their Tennessee farm in the face of bank foreclosure and the devastating floods on the river that runs right past their land and seems to overflow at least twice a year. Here they are in a quiet scene in between the moments of crisis.
Beth, honey, go feed the chickens.
I fed them this morning.
Well, feed them again.
Okay.
It's the middle of the afternoon.
My favorite time of day.
That's one of the best scenes in the film, sweet and tender. Later on, they fight over Gibson's determination to fight nature and fate almost single-handedly.
I need to talk to you, Tom.
Lewis, wait, Lewis, stop.
I need to talk to you, Tom.
Stop now, Lewis, get up.
Leave him alone. Tom, you're pushing him too hard. He's just a kid. What's the matter with you?
What's the matter with you? Come on, get in the cab, Lewis.
I'm not going to let you do
Look,
this.
I had this. Now, if we don't stop the river, it's going to finish it.
Well, then let it in. Let it finish it before you do. I can't live like this anymore, Tom.
Why don't you just clear the hell out and go live in a big fancy house and go away then?
I don't want to live in a big fancy house with Joe Wade. I want to live here with you, and you can't hold back the river with a wife and 2 exhausted kids. Why won't you get any help?
Well, that's a nice scene, but the problem there is that it's treated as if Mel Gibson, his character, has some kind of a personality disorder that we can treat. And the fact is, it's going to rain and it's going to flood no matter what's the problem with Mel Gibson. The bad guy in the movie, who was also brought in as an enemy, is going to make things terrible for everybody, is played by Scott Glenn, well played. He wants to force them off their land. He wants to flood the valley and use the water for irrigation and hydroelectric power. And the fatal flaw in the movie is that basically Scott Glenn is right. He may be mean, he may be heartless, but when he says that sooner or later that rain or a drought or a bad crop is going to force that family into bankruptcy, Well, from everything we can see in the movie, he's right. And what he wants to do is irrigate the valley, have more cheap power, and have more jobs. I'm on Scott Glenn's side, and that's the problem with this movie. There's an interesting subplot and goes to work as a scab at a nearby steel mill, but the movie has a deadly way of putting in a touching little scene that works, and then letting it symbolize a great big scene right afterwards. For example, the scabs let a frightened deer go free that's run into their factory, and that'd be a good scene, except that immediately afterwards, the strikers let the frightened scabs go free. And there almost ought to be subtitles to say, make sure you don't miss this wonderfully profound symbolism.
Yeah. One of my problems was we showed two scenes there with Sissy Spacek in it, and she's a terrific actress, and she's very good in this film. But there are lots of time in this film that don't involve Sissy Spacek, and that bothered me. There's stuff with the unions, there's stuff with the bankers, and there's a scene with Sissy Spacek getting her arm caught in a farm implement and all this. And I'm saying, let's stick more with this personal story. And the other thing that I think that's just bad is that, just what you said, which is it's all good and bad. They might as well be just labeled good, bad, and be done with it. And as a result, we sit there and say, well, we know what this movie's about. We know it 5 minutes into it, which is the first half hour of this film is a replay of all of country, including a farm auction.
Including the farmers breaking it up and saying, no sale. Yeah. Exactly the same. That was strange, that there were so many echoes in this film from the other films, which is unfortunate.
It is unfortunate, but it's there.
It's there. It's there, and furthermore, this one has its work cut out for it being better than the others, and it doesn't make it. And so many of the scenes here do not have the day-to-day immediacy of the daily life, both in places in the heart and in country. It seems like this is the scene where she almost gets caught in the farm machinery. This is the scene where he almost gets drowned, as if each scene had a label on it.
I just don't want to spend 2 hours knowing that farmers are good and everybody who isn't a farmer is bad.
Especially when anybody can see that the farmer ought to sell his farm. And
see, I didn't figure that out. I'll give you credit for that. I'll give you credit for that insight. Coming up next at the movies, how a teenage car parker learns a lot about life from a wealthy old card sharp.
The best training for life is life. I'm thinking about going into sales. The Cabana Boy is going into sales.
Film The Flamingo Kid is one of the pleasant surprises of this holiday movie season, a season filled with a lot of disappointment. It's a sweet little coming-of-age comedy about a teenage boy from a working-class Brooklyn neighborhood who has his head turned when he begins working as a parking attendant at a ritzy but gauche Long Island country club. Matt Dillon plays the boy, and he's way out of his league when he goes to visit the home of the wealthy man, Richard Crenna, who has taken a liking to him.
Darling, why don't you go to Vassar or Smith? Because I didn't get accepted there, Mother. Oh, they didn't accept you. Oh. Thank you. Aspic, Jeffrey? Mother, I don't really think Jeffrey knows what aspic is.
No, I don't.
It's like Jello.
So don't take it, Jeffrey. I hate aspic.
Oh, Phil, Lizzie worked all day on this dish. I read it to her from the New York Times.
Phyllis, I don't want anything on my plate that moves. Right, Jeffrey? I've been thinking that it's bad for our image to have a parking lot attendant in our house.
Uncle Phil.
It's only just his wife.
No. Does Cabana Boy sound better?
Cabana Boy?
Oh, you like that?
Why, Mr. Brody, I give my right arm.
You know Colonel Eastman?
Oh, of course. He owns the El Flamingo.
After dinner, I'm going to give him a phone call. He's into me for a lot of money.
Daddy's part owner of the club.
This summer, I'm going to win the rest of it.
And the way he's going to win the club is by playing gin rummy. He is the master at that game at that club. And this character of his, Mr. Brody, is quite a character. His motto, you may remember, is "You are what you wear." I like that. He wears a lot of silk shirts. The key to this film is its knowing sense of 60s detail and also a terrific star performance by Richard Crenna as Mr. Brody, who, of course, Richard Crenna has been known mostly as a TV actor. This will change that, I hope. He is properly vulgar, this Mr. Brody, and very funny in his role as the shrewdest card player at the country club. And he teaches Matt Dillon almost every one of his tricks. Almost every one. The special accomplishment of The Flamingo Kid, in addition to its humor, is that it's not just another teenage sex comedy. It has some of those elements, but beyond that, this film develops both its teenage and adult characters into complete characters, and together they form a complete world. This is a very funny movie.
I liked it a whole lot, too. I really did, and I liked Matt Dillon in it. Mm-hmm. You know, The funny thing about Matt Dillon's career is that even though in his very first picture, which we saw years ago, Over the Edge, he was very earnest and good, straight young actor, nevertheless, in the years in between, he's turned into this sort of teenage idol, you know, when teenage girls read magazine articles about
Jimmy Dean,
who his latest girlfriend is or whether he got a new car. Matt Dillon is an actor, and in this movie, it is such a subtle and such a sweet performance that it's likely to be overlooked by people who say, oh, it's just Matt Dillon. It's real good acting.
No, I think the two of them really have an interesting relationship, but again, I credit the filmmaker, Gary Marshall, actually, who creates a whole world. Very good.
It's a good film. Now let's recap our reactions to the movies that we reviewed this week. We disagreed on Breakin 2, Electric Boogaloo, the breakdance movie. I liked it more than Gene did. 2 thumbs up, though, for The Cotton Club, the wonderful new movie by Francis Ford Coppola about Harlem in the 1920s. 2 thumbs down on The River, the third and least impressive of this year's movies about life on the farm. And last, 2 thumbs up for The Flamingo Kid with Matt Dillon as a teenager spending a summer of discovery and Richard Crenna helping to teach him what he ought to be discovering.
Right. Well, so much for this week. Coming up next time at the movies, we'll review Michael Keaton in the gangster film spoof Johnny Dangerously. Also, Dudley Moore is a man who has impregnated 2 women, only one of whom is his wife. That's next week, and we'll see you until then at the movies.